but also working with all of our nonprofits and all those groups as well. So I thought that was a real and we all know that, but I think it was another good point. So so we hope to get the group together once we get the report. We tried to get a cross section so all those folks are representing different groups in town that they can report back to and hopefully follow up and continue to work on those things. So, and I've been to a lot of workshops, I have to say, and most of the people that were involved, it really was a good workshop for a change. They're not always great, but this was very good.
I agree. Fran?
What was the context of the affordability as far as the perspective of this group, the affordable housing?
Sure, I think some of it is around, no question about volunteers, younger volunteers looking for people who will serve on the ambulance association, the volunteer fire department, the need to have younger folks be able to afford to move into town. So that was a big focus of affordable housing and how that fit into the idea of making sure Washington's resilient and ready to move, when stuff happens, the next disaster, that we're ready. So
great, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I would just add that we had someone from the Housing Trust and affordable housing represented as well. I feel like there was another group, but anyway, yeah. So it came up with volunteers, but also just young people being able to move here, workers being able to move here. So yeah, it was good. It was a great conversation. I just also a quick report. I was at the COG meeting I think maybe last week, and one thing I thought was interesting is they had the deputy of revenue present. He's going to be administering the infrastructure money that has come to the state from the federal government. And he really wants to help assist the small towns try to apply for some of that money. And one of the engineers that we worked with on the Titus plan thought that might be applicable. So I'm going to follow up on that and try to reach out. It's tough because most of the money seems to be earmarked for the big things like the roads and bridges and public transportation and such. But my hope is that either they will earmark some for small communities, for smaller projects like connectivity, accessibility, sidewalk, parking projects like ours, or on the flip side, maybe with all of this federal money coming in, a lot of these big items will be funded and it will leave some of the state money that usually goes to those big projects left for the small town. So either way, I'm hopeful in this upcoming fiscal year that we'll be able to try to tap into some of that money coming to the state. So I'll keep you updated. And also on the note of sidewalks, we have confirmed with the construction firm that the sidewalks in New Preston are still on the schedule and they're going to hopefully be early spring. Jim was really pushing for that to be as early as possible for the convenience of the businesses. But I'm just thrilled that it's still on the schedule. Materials have been secured. They've got the curbing. That was the holdup. I know, right? So maybe it's going to happen. I'm not going to hold my breath yet, but I'm excited. I did speak with Julie King and I'm hoping that she'll be able to come to our March meeting. We talked about updating some of the housing study that we did looking at bringing young families to town. That was all done with 2019 pre-COVID numbers, and COVID has clearly changed the landscape. So we're going to look to sort of update that plan. That was a project of the NOW subcommittee. So we're hoping for March. We'll see it depending on her time, really. And I spoke with Julia on some other projects, which are later on the agenda, but she will be coming to the meeting in April to go over the metrics for Explore and all the social media that we have. So we can watch for those in the coming meetings. Does anyone have questions about any of the stuff we're working on or that's upcoming. Obviously, it's budget season, so that's kind of been the big talk around town hall, and that's been keeping Jim and Jay really busy with infinite meetings.
Busy
Can't have
and
any more fun than that, let
depressed.
me tell you.
Yeah, it's just,
But we will say, just for folks, I'm sure will realize, it's a every year we do our best to try to keep the budget flat, if we can, not raise taxes, and I don't anticipate that either. But, this year with all the inflation talk, the energy costs especially increases, it'll be interesting. Insurance costs, of course, if any of you guys are involved with organizations, those costs and health insurance costs are going up as well. So, but our staff we meet with every department and they're great working together to try to keep, do what we need to do, but try to keep it within reasonable costs. So far, we'll see.
When we do the conversation with Julie next time, Julie
Mhm.
King,
yep.
would you be able to walk us through what the full intention is and what the likely plan is for the child care center?
Yes.
So that the team has a clear understanding of what the intent is there. You guys have done a great job in pulling it all together. So all you got to do is walk us through it so that we have an understanding of it. I mean, and you circulated a document not too long ago, which laid it out, but I'd love to talk it through.
Sure. So her housing presentation was actually separate from the childcare.
Yes,
They
yes.
are related. They are related because we're still talking about attracting young families, and services for young families is part of that conversation. So while it might be kind of two separate presentations, or we could, depending on whether she has time to get to updating the housing market one, we can certainly walk through the whole childcare from the beginning, including the survey, and hopefully by March we'll have some budget numbers and or construction estimate numbers, so we can really kind of talk that through. So I think that's a great idea.
And it would be very helpful if we had the business side of that conversation as well.
Yep.
Okay, what the operation would look like, what the budget might look like for the operation, and so on, so that we begin to get some understanding of what is intended there.
That sounds great. Yep, we can absolutely have that on the March agenda. So I'm kind of hoping, Jim, you have your hand up? Is that on purpose? No, I don't know what that just appeared on my screen, that little hand. I don't know what that was about. So I'm not really sure how to proceed here. We have half of the committee, which means officially we can't vote on the minutes, which is not a huge concern, but we were supposed to.
Wait a minute, don't we have 6?
I don't count. So we have you and Fran and Robin and Jim.
Okay, there's
and Trisha.
4.
That's 5.
And then you've got Jim, and you've got Trisha. How many? We need 6.
It's 5 of 10. Yeah. So which we can just chat while we're hopefully maybe someone else will sign on. But it brings me to one thing we've kind of talked a little bit last month, and Dan brought up the whole idea about how we're organized and how we operate. And we are a very large committee. Most of the other commissions and committees have like 5 voting members and then alternates. So they're 8 or 9 will be at the meeting, but they only need 3 or 4 for their minutes. We have quite a large threshold we have to cover. So it's something that we can talk about and see what people think. I would like to go ahead, because we're in budget time, go through the plan for next year and at least talk about the priorities. We can have a discussion about that and get the sort of the feelings of the people here. It's not an official vote, but I don't know what else we can do about that. So I guess we'll just carry on. We'll hold the vote on, or the approval of the minutes, and we'll just have a discussion about the plan for next year until maybe someone else logs on. So hopefully everyone had a chance. We talked about the plan, last year's plan and funding request at the last meeting, and I took all of the suggestions and comments and put them into the plan for next year, the 22-23 plan. And I sent that out to you all. I'll go ahead and share that on the screen so that we can all be looking at the same thing. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review that. Are we seeing this here?
Yes.
Okay, great. So also there are a couple of comments on here from Dan, and I'm hoping he'll share his thinking, especially about the sort of the three main objectives that he added to the plan, which I thought was a great idea. It sort of kind of keeps us focused on what our mission is and what our goals are. So I think that's helpful. So we can go through these. Also, I think it was Trisha last month had asked if there were in order of priority, and I said that I wasn't aware that they were. And Dan actually put in then some suggestions to prioritize, and I'm happy to cut and paste and move it around so that the numbers can reflect our priority. And so I want to just hear what people have to say about that. So Dan, did you want to talk about the top three, or did you want us to go first through what we have here?
Well, let me just quickly comment on what the top three are. The top three are really the flip side of the same coin. One side of the coin says, what are the capabilities that the committee needs to have in order to deliver the plan for this year? So, for example, we need to be very proficient in communications. We need to be willing to reach out into the community in order to get the community involved in one way or another. And then we also need to be in a position to develop task-oriented ad hoc committees, which are pulled together on a short run in order to move a particular project forward. All right. Then the flipping of the coin says, okay, let's go through and review the talent that's on the committee and make an assessment as to whether or not we've got all that. Well, that is very, very, very straightforward. I mean, there's a lot of talent on this committee, and certainly more than enough to be able to deliver those capabilities. So that's all that is really intended with those three comments.
Great.
Trisha, did you want to say something?
No, I agree with Dan. I think that the only thing that I thought was missing, and we can talk about that, I guess, is this is a heck of an agenda or a plan. And I'm just hoping that we can find talent to help make this happen.
Great. Yep, it is. It's a lot. It's a large agenda. And we've made some good headway, but certainly there's much to do.
Absolutely.
So that is great. And we can think about ways we can reach out to the community to find more people with specific expertise or skills that can help us in some of these objectives. Thankfully, a lot of them also have other commissions or committees or selectmen or someone tied to them as well. But yeah, that's, looking for more help is always a great idea.
Okay, good.
Hey,
Um,
Michelle.
Yeah.
Just to dovetail on that, I was just wondering, so are these, I mean, I know they're listed in priority order, not necessarily chronologically, but are there like, is there a sorting of like must have, nice to have, and there's a third one? You know what I'm saying? So like there's like of however many there are. I mean, is like the first six we have to do these, and then the next three are, well, this would be great if we can, and the last four are, well, if we can't get around to them, the world won't end. Like, is there any kind of sorting in that way, or is it all like we should do everything as far as we can?
So I think that's sort of what Dan and Trisha were getting at last time in the prioritizing, so when it comes to, I guess for myself, I have a finite amount of time, and I work on things as much as I'm able. And I try to be really cognizant of the fact that you all are volunteers. And so I ask for your help, and most of you have helped on one project or another, which is fantastic. So I guess the only other thing I would say about that is that pretty much I think every single one of these objectives is also in the plan of conservation and development. So which is 10 years, will be 10 years old in 2023. So there are things that are long-term goals. And if we make a little progress this year and don't achieve it and continue it to the next year, that's kind of how I've been plugging away at all of these. Is you work on what you can, and sometimes funding comes available and it shifts your priority, and then you get shut down on something else and that shifts that priority. So I think it's a work in progress would be my answer. That I think they're all relatively important. Maybe the prioritizing is I think that is a good idea, to make sure that we're focusing on the things that we feel are the most important, and some of the others will just take what we can.
No, that's fine. I just wondered if, the first three we have to do, the next three we should do, and the final three are, well, if we get to them, the world won't end if we don't. But I mean,
Yeah.
Some
it's
of
great how
these,
it is.
Robin, some of these are dictated by other activities in town. For example, the number one is really to support fundraising for the now promised Washington Community Center. We'll be operating at a pace which is consistent with what that that group is going to be advancing. So if they run slow, we're going to run slow. If they run fast, we're going to have to run faster. That means that number 9 may not get the attention that it deserves. So in large measure, this is sort of an operating plan, which tells us what it is that we should be dealing with or focused with each throughout the year. And each quarter, we're going to step back and we're going to say, okay, where are we with these? All right. Some of them will get parked then. And candidly, from my experience, some new ones may get added because something else pops up in town. So the idea here is more an operating plan that tells us basically how we should be allocating our time as we work our way through the year.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So let's go ahead and just quickly go through these 9, because we did.
Michelle,
Yeah, Fran?
before we do that,
Yeah.
I mean, as I look at these, I mean, they are all important to this. They're all important to this committee, but we're not the drivers of every single one of them. I mean, it's either a collaboration or someone else is the lead principle, for want of a better word. And I wonder if it's at all useful to try to identify that in terms of the context of each of these priorities. I mean, for example, the fundraising for the design and construction of the Washington Community Center. What exactly is the role of, I mean, as an example, I'm not saying that we need to state it right now. And we say facilitate community conversations and provide communications, but what does that exactly mean? Is it through the newsletter? You know, and maybe this is, once the plan is adopted, to try to give more detail on each of them. But I do have a concern, and we'll talk about it, but I do have a concern that the improved pedestrian and parking options priority 9 is priority 9. It seems to me, in terms of the development of the business community, that those are extremely important.
I'm sorry, Fran, what did you say, 9?
Number 9, I mean, that's I had 2 segments to my statement, but priority 9, as it's listed here, is the pedestrian and parking options for the villages. And
Yes.
when you talk about the things, you know, it is likely that not everything will get attention in the coming year.
Yeah,
And I think that needs more prominence, to the extent that this committee is able. But if we identify the fact that we're supporting the initiative and that the leadership comes from someplace else, that's a different matter.
Thank you, Fran. Yeah, I actually have a hard time prioritizing any of these because I think they're all important. And I also think it's interesting, there are tie-overs, whether it's the sidewalks and parking or the arts and culture, all of those are initiatives of sustainability CT as well. So there's tie-in there. So I hear you, and maybe the committee, right now the pedestrian and parking is sitting at 8. Dan's suggestion was 9. Maybe we consider moving that up higher. You know, that's sort of the initiative of, that's up to the committee to hear where everyone thinks our priorities should be.
And I also don't know whether we want to look at it from the point of view of a year from now. If there were sort of a proverbial report card, what would we be looking for in terms of all of these, in terms of results?
Right. Well, I like the idea of a report card and progress. As you mentioned, you know, we aren't always the drivers of all of these. You know, the community center, which really grew out of the Economic Development Committee and the research and the work that Dan and Tony did to research other sites. We kept forward, we moved along through EDC with the public forums and design and everything. And then we got to the fundraising, and with COVID, it just sort of, you know, was stalled for about a year, sort of out of our control. And the selectmen are now sort of heading that portion up. So that move, you know, we're a partner in that one. Same with the sidewalks. You know, we have money in our budget every year, capital budget, for some improvement. We did do the engineering this year for the Titus, but without some kind of grant, we won't get that whole project completed. That would be a heavy lift for just the town budget. We're looking at maybe doing it in phases, and, you know, tackling small pieces of it as we work towards the whole plan. So, and we've got the town budget, the highway department, selectman's office, several other commissions on some of these. So it's not always up to the EDC how quickly these things move, or at which jumps to the front. So that's, I think, something that we'll just have to communicate well and sort of wrestle with as we move through all of these. But I do agree in a way that the pedestrian parking options, it's really important for economic development. I was just talking with Julia yesterday about the Welcome Center, which is later on the agenda, but she said that, you know, the way people, when they visit a town, they like to park and walk around. They want to walk around and see what there is to do. And our especially the depot is really designed for driving around. And so we're really trying to work on that. And it's important as a destination, as a shopping, as a place to come and have lunch and go shopping. You know, we want to make that friendly, for the whole experience. So it's an important objective, I think, of the WBA and the EDC to keep that in mind and on the forefront. So I think we can talk about that as we move down.
Excuse me, Michelle.
Yeah,
This is Joan Wilton. I'm not on the committee, but I would like to offer a word.
sure.
What I take from what Fran is saying is that you need to stick to the things that do develop the economy in town. As far as making it a destination to have lunch and go to shops, you have to have shops that people want to go to. And I can tell you that over 50 years ago, my mother and her friends from Brookfield were coming up here for the yarn shop and then having lunch. So it's always been a destination. But as far as the local people who, you know, want to go shopping or want to go to this store, that store, parking is very important. So it's my opinion, you know, support fundraising for the community center. Well, the whole town should do that. That's not a function of the Economic Development Committee, in my opinion. Same with supporting the Housing Commission. We should all be doing that. So I think I can't see all the priorities, but I think the sidewalks and the parking for economic development maybe should be priority one. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Joan. And you'll see as we go through the pages, you'll see the other priorities. We actually just got kind of stuck on the first page.
No, I understand that. I just don't know them right now.
I hear you. I think that's well said, and it is an interesting. You know, the EDC is partnering on a lot of these. One thing that with affordable housing is we've all realized over the last year or so, especially with the challenge of finding employees, whether it's for the supply or the market or the bookstore, anywhere. You know, housing for our young people really is economic development. It's the vitality of our town. So it is important. It does touch on economic development as well, but maybe isn't the primary.
Fran,
Yes.
the intent of this, there are 3 tasks that we have identified for ourselves for this year. Only this year. Okay. One of them is to develop alternatives and plans for each of the villages. So there's 5 villages, and what we're proposing to do is we would produce a pedestrian and parking plan for each one of the 5. All right. The second thing is we would then take them out and request proposals and bids as we had decided we wanted to proceed to the next step. And then the third one would be for us to then determine how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to put together the funding in order to make it happen? That's all that we're really trying to do on that particular item this year. Now, how would you add to it? What would you do in order to make it satisfy your needs?
No, I think what you're describing is, you know, I mean, definitely is what needs to be done. It's just when you list something as priority number 9, where is the intensity of effort going to come from? with, you know, limited resources, limited number of people. That's really what I was rephrasing. I mean, I know it's important. I know people think it's important, but it was the placement of it that I was objecting to more than anything else. And
I see.
also just the idea
Okay.
of ultimately on all of these, what are we going, you know, the report card that I mentioned in terms of how we look back a
Okay,
year from now on what we've done.
okay. Well, just talking about the report card, in general, what we would do is take the tasks, okay, and fill in with a single sentence behind each one of the listed tasks, what had been accomplished. So if we succeeded to deliver number 9, okay, we would in fact have a very, very good idea how we were going to fund which one of the villages we were, which, if not all of the villages we were going to work on, what the plans would be and where we would get the money. That's what we would have accomplished this year. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, no, and what you're describing is, you know, I mean, I think makes a lot of sense because it really, I mean, it's tangible. I mean, you know, as with many things like this, I mean, what we're saying in terms of the priorities at this point are very generalized, and having specifics that we're aiming for as we develop this, I think would be a good idea.
Figured I should just scroll down to what we were talking
I have a
about here.
question. This is Margaret, Dan's
Hi,
wife.
Margaret.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
I've been, I guess, lucky enough because of COVID to be part of these economic development meetings and lots of opinions, right? Like everyone has lots of opinions. I have a question though. And Michelle, I've talked to you about this and I've talked to anyone that could listen to me. Housing, affordable housing in this town is a priority. And I've been here for 30 years and I have heard everyone talk about affordable housing for 30 years. I don't know what progress has been made on affordable housing since I've been here, and what can the Economic Development Committee bring to the initiative of affordable housing going forward that already hasn't been talked about, discussed, looked at, and how do you measure that? And that's always been, and if you look at, and everyone talks about families and with young children, families with young children may not necessarily come to a town like this and pay $500,000 for a 1-bedroom house and 1 bathroom, where they can go to New Milford, the next town over, and get 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and pay the same amount of money. I'm just wondering, and it's got to be on I know it's an initiative, it's got to be on every town's agenda, but I'm wondering what the Economic Development Committee can bring to the table to change that. Like I said, I've been here for 30 years and I've heard everyone talks about it. We need more young families with kids so they can work at the fire department. I'm just wondering, and this is just a play on, you know, the priorities and what economic development is actually working on, and you know, the report card. So that's just my, I guess, my 2 cents.
Thank you, Margaret. You know, it's interesting because it brings up something that I think we sort of struggle with at times, and
Yeah.
I don't, hopefully Jim and Jay are still here because and are listening. They've turned off their cameras, but the selectmen have let me know that it is something that they would like me to work on. It is an
Right.
objective that
Right.
that they would like me to work on.
Right.
And as the Economic Development Committee, ways that we've been able to assist the affordable housing plan that was just passed and is just getting underway is in communication. There have been articles in the newsletter, advertising for the public forums into the selectmen's email. So,
Right.
and there's some upcoming communication type things that are in the affordable housing plan that
Right.
I think we can assist with in communicating, whether it's communicating to the, having a conversation with the community or putting it into our the newsletter or other communication that we have. So that's
Right.
sort of the first piece. I mean, we obviously are not in the business of developing housing. But it kind of goes with the whole community development component. So right now we're just facilitating that conversation within the community and making sure they're aware of things happening.
I'll add a little bit to that if I can, Michelle.
Thanks.
Margaret, I've been here for over 40 years, and this issue of housing is, you're right, it's been an issue forever. We haven't been able to address it. What do we have, Michelle? How many affordable housing units do we have in town? Not too many, if I remember.
Like
I forget the
44,
number.
2.02% or something.
Yeah, so I just see it as becoming more of an issue as we've gone to 30% of our housing is owned by people who don't live here. We've gone to, and my phone's gonna ring in a second, so hold on a second so I can turn.
Gotta get it. I'm just,
meetings.
and I know that every single town, in Connecticut, in the world, in the nation, has to address these issues. I'm just wondering what a committee like Economic Development can bring to the table. And you said communications. Well, if that's what it is, then maybe that should somewhere be stated in here.
It is.
It is. All right, well, to give kind of a communication.
There it is.
There it is.
If I look at this and I didn't know any better, I would say that the Economic Development Committee is the leader and the initiator and the visionary on all of these things. I'm just saying, and there's a lot of, so everyone's talking about priorities and, priority 1, priority 2, how much time you're going to spend on it. And I think that's kind of important. And I think everyone's getting on that. I'm just jumping on the bandwagon here, but.
I agree. And I would like to hear, from the committee about those priorities. Jay, did you want to
Right.
finish your thought or did you lose it?
Well, only that, and I apologize there,
No.
and it might ring again. You never know. But just that lately, with the cost of housing, if you've seen the housing sales lately, the costs are gone up. Also, our numbers of people who don't live in town has gone up significantly, and I just think it continues to grow. And at least if we continue this discussion and try to work on it, I think we need to do that, is my opinion. Otherwise, we decide we want to just be a gated community and go on from there and start hiring firemen and, the whole rest. But I think it's still
I
worth the effort.
absolutely agree with you 1000% that you have to talk about it and it has to be an initiative. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, you can't just ignore it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what is considered affordable housing in town?
Well, Michelle can give you the figures on that. The other thing is, I think it just to say, and this is where communication, Michelle mentioned about resiliency planning, sustainability, anything group you want to talk to, it's on
Right.
everybody's radar that's an issue. And I think there's another step we have to make to bring, and we have had, many of us are on multiple committees and we talk about this all the time. So I think there's efforts for all these groups to have a stake in the game and to figure out, we haven't been able to solve it, and most of our surrounding communities haven't solved it either. So we got to find some way. So anyway, but Michelle can give you numbers.
Yeah, and actually, Margaret, the affordable housing plan that we just passed as a town is on the homepage of the website. And
Yes.
you might want to take a look at it. It's got great statistics on where we are with housing, how many units we have, where they are, what counts as affordable. And then it lays out the goals of
Right.
the plan. So take a look at that. We could talk about affordable housing for the whole time, and there's a lot of other things that I want to make sure we get to. So if we could maybe just briefly take a look, I'm going to just highlight the 9 things we have on our plan, and we can maybe talk about those priorities. So we have the community center, we have
Right.
affordable housing, we have communications, which has been sort of the bread and butter of the EDC here. We are the ones who do that in town.
I know that,
Broadband.
Michelle. That I'm aware of. Yes,
I'm sorry, what?
I'm aware of that.
Oh, okay. Broadband, bringing fiber to the town, and unfortunately Wayne isn't here, but he's sort of our guru on that. Sustainability, working with that committee on the objectives that
help.
overlap with economic development.
Thank you for giving me the
Working with the
opportunity.
NOW subgroup on attracting young families, services to families, real estate. Working with the WBA, outline improved pedestrian parking options for the village, and in support advanced town and regional arts and culture organizations. So those are the 9 objectives that we've identified for next year's plan. We've tied funding to those to those objectives. And it sounds like, they were in random order. Dan gave us his advice on how to prioritize. Fran would like to see the pedestrian and parking move up. I kind of see them as related to WBA, so I feel like maybe bringing those 2 closer together.
Michelle, which two are you gonna bring?
So the pedestrian and parking options for the villages, I see is really, which is currently 8, proposed to be 9. I see that as very tied to the work with the WBA and working on things like the guide and expanding because the WBA, even though the members are everywhere in town, the villages are sort of the heart of the economic
I'm sorry?
parts. So maybe we move that closer to the WBA objective, because I see them as sort of related. Does anyone else want to weigh in on the priorities and which we think should move up higher? And hopefully I did send this to you all last week, so you hopefully have a copy in front of you. It's 3 pages, so that makes it a challenge. Let's see. So if we've got 1, 2, and 3, I think community center, affordable housing, and communications have all come up multiple times. That seems to make sense to me. I think Dan's idea of working with the WBA up to the number 4 makes sense to me, because it's a lot of what EDC does. I think bringing the sidewalks and the parking up right behind that makes sense to me, and moving the broadband and sustainable work, and I don't know, it's hard. They're all important. They're all important, and I don't think because they're in a different, because of their order, I don't want to ignore any of them.
Michelle,
any other thoughts?
is there a sense that, and I would put this out, I guess, to the committee members, is there a sense that these 9 items are essentially too big of a bite? We're looking to do what we can with these 9 items, but maybe not making a lot of progress on any of them through the course of the year. Should they be narrowed down to 4 or 5? In other words, we've got on our agenda to appoint a broadband committee. So that would essentially put it in the hands of another committee to do are we being redundant on any of these things when we talk about support? Should it be pared down to really focus on the top 3 or 4 priorities? I don't know. What do the commissioners think?
Well, I think maybe we should pare them down and really focus hard on what we can drive.
Well, taking the broadband committee that you mentioned, Jim, as an example. I mean, we say we're going to create a committee. Now, what is our active involvement, just for example, beyond that? I mean, we would help with the communications about it. But is our major function to appoint that committee and hear back from that committee and know that it's doing a job? And therefore how time consuming, and it's time consuming what is the time consuming amount for the committee? But of course, Michelle, it's your time that we're parsing in terms of your involvement with all of these.
Yeah, so Fran, I agree to that particular point. So let's take broadband. That's a committee that would be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, report to the Board of Selectmen, and work with Northwest Connect, which we're very fortunate to have Wayne Heilman as the chair. I look at the WBA, for example, the service guide, the guidebook, event promotion. I mean, are we being redundant? Is that already being done by the WBA? Does the WEDC need to commit resources to that?
I think that probably is the question. Michelle has been helping with the guidebook. It is important for WEDC to commit when it's being reprinted, to commit financial resources to it. But, and certainly Sandor Max is a critical part of that, but are they performing that function under the WEDC? Where are they committing it? Or is WEDC's role just a financial one? Or could it just be a financial one in terms of the guidebook, for example?
I would just jump in and say that I think the partnership with the EDC and the WBA is important on things like that. I think if the town is going to be paying for parts, having a seat at the table and really being a part of the conversation is important. I could just hear if the EDC was just handing out money and not participating in any of the decision making that it might look like there wasn't any sort of an accountability. I think we've been sort of figuring it out as we go. There are some things that the WBA just does, and then there are things that we partner on, and I think it's an important role of the EDC to partner with the WBA on those. But if the committee or commission feels differently.
I don't disagree with that at all, Michelle. I think it's just the definition of what happens and how deeply the two are tied together. Obviously, economic development and business association, there's no way that they cannot be closely allied.
Right.
Hey,
I
Michelle?
have a question. When it comes to final decisions with the WBA, let's say on the brochure that we're doing, who has the final say? Do we, or does the WBA? Just to educate me.
Right now, for example, with the guidebook, there's a committee of the WBA and myself working on the edits, and then the final proof is going to be brought back to the EDC. So it's really a partnership. I don't know that right now one is ranking over the other on that project. There are other projects where it may be because it's EDC Board of Selectmen, for example,
Uh-huh.
then, WBA can't
Right.
override something that the Board of Selectmen have a lot of say on. So I think it kind of depends on the situation and who's sort of working on it. But I think so far we've really tried to be transparent and open with everything that everyone is working on, whether it's things that I'm working on, the committee is working on, or the WBA is working on. We share it all here and gather that input.
All right, thank you.
Robin?
Yeah, so, and if this will make your head explode, then just tell me no and move on. But is there a way, and I'm just throwing color coding out as an idea, you don't, because I know formatting makes people crazy, but like to be able to color code each one of these items in how many different moving parts there are. So like work with the WBA, I assume that's really one. I mean, I suppose you could say it's all the different people in the WBA, but it's really working with the WBA. So that would be like one. But like the first one about the community center, I imagine there's a bunch of moving parts with that, which would make it a little more complex. And then if we like cross tab that with how much time you would expect to spend, just roughly, like some of them I imagine like, oh, you just go to this one meeting and then whatever, as opposed to reviewing a lot of stuff or something. I don't know, but if there's a way to combine those two pieces of information that might help inform what this will look like in the coming year. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. I guess what I struggle with this a little bit. I actually don't struggle so much with the whole list. It just kind of comes and goes as things do. I'm just thinking about the community center, for example. Last year, as we were wrapping the design portion and getting ready for the fundraising and moving into the community conversations, I was spending a lot of time putting together some materials, the display board in the foyer, getting geared up and ready to go. And then nothing happened for a while. So it's hard. It's hard. It can consume, like newsletter, when we've got a deadline that can consume some time and then nothing happens so to say it comes and goes and fits in spurts that seem to be out of our control, whether it's because funding becomes available or we're waiting for engineering and that takes 2 months. So then we focus on something else where we're waiting.
Sure. But like the newsletter,
I find it challenging, but maybe that's
I'm
where
sure
somebody who specializes in this could do that.
but like the newsletter, I mean, that happens once a quarter?
Yeah,
And
it's quarterly.
What, I don't know, X amount of hours for each one. So, I mean, that one you kind of know.
Yeah.
So that's like what percent of maybe your monthly focus? I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but it might be helpful to think in those terms. But again, if it's crazy talk, it's crazy talk. Move on.
No, I think sure. We could think in those terms. I guess I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to achieve. Are we feeling like we haven't made enough progress on our goals? We're trying to prioritize them, which I understand, because we want to make sure that we're spending our energy in the right places. So yeah, I guess I want to I want to understand the issue we're trying to solve.
Jill, if I could just throw in, I was listening other than the phone call there, but it sounds like partly what happens is there's overlaps with other groups that are also involved in these same goals, which is part of what we talked about a little bit before. if you remember Tim Cole's spreadsheets that he had on the POCD that had a goal, had the main committee involved, and then it sort of identified the other committees that are also involved in that, departments, people, maybe that would be helpful to the group to see, okay, here's our goal on housing. And also the Board of Selectmen, every other group, there's a bunch of other groups that are working on that. And maybe part of the work we all need to do is, when there is so many overlaps like that, bring people together on those groups to help us talk about it. I mean, we do have overlaps with people. Obviously, Jim and I are here and Michelle's on sustainability. So we have overlaps, but maybe that would be helpful to the group to know who else is working on these with you on these priorities.
I think that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
It's a great idea. And how we
Yeah,
can
agreed.
supplement the work.
Exactly. And where you can take the lead, but where the other places, you're a part of it, maybe not the lead group though.
Right.
I like
And
that because in his spreadsheet, he had primary responsibility and secondary. So for
Right,
example,
exactly.
the EDC things would be primary.
If
Right,
I can
but-
show
but-
you what this, if you want to share, let me share your screen for a second. I don't know if it's worth it, but I can just show you an example of what he did for one stuff.
Sure. Let me,
It's just for a second. That,
yep.
okay, so I'll share my screen here. Host disabled screen sharing,
Nope,
okay?
I just enabled it. Try it again.
There we go. So let's see if that works. You see this screen here? I hope
Yeah,
shows the ones on the, and then across the top, these are all the various boards that, and you can see sometimes there's none, we wouldn't have to list every board, but it just gives you an idea of then, okay, the first was a clearinghouse for information about sustainable practice. This is a sustainability committee, and Conservation Commission at the time was the lead because we didn't have a sustainability committee back then. So, but these other groups, were involved. So that might be just one way to take a look at it.
I think that's great, Jay. I would, maybe
You
at
could
our
do it.
next meeting too, I can share, because Tim did this for the economic development chapter of the
Right.
POCD. And so we
Right.
can take a look at, and we've done this in the past. We did this about a year ago. Looked at the POCD, what were the goals attributed to EDC? And who was the primary, who was secondary on those different responsibilities. So I think it would be a useful exercise to pull out what is currently in the POCD. We're talking about the next POCD, so we should be thinking about that, but then also overlay that with our annual plan for next year and see where those overlaps are and who the various committees and primary responsibilities are. So I can definitely, I can bring that up and sort of, I can't really overlay this into that. Well, we'll figure it out. Maybe
I know
we'll,
it just found for me, it helped me not freak out that I was responsible for everything.
that is
great.
useful. That is
Yeah.
useful.
Oh, that's his fault.
But it's also important because I believe it says right on the website, goal number one, the role of the EDC is to deliver the POCD, something like that. That's, I shortened it, but our mission is tightly related to the POCD. So seeing how that interplays, but then also to Jay's point, highlighting the different people involved in each of these objectives and where the responsibility lies, I think is also important and would be useful. So that's a great idea. It is already a little after 4. Do we want to, does anyone want to weigh in further on the priorities? Some adjusting? Any other thoughts on that?
Is it possible to group all the support efforts together? Because that's not a spearhead, that's a support effort.
Group, say that again, group.
Yeah,
Or-
like support, or work with What's the difference between work with and support? Nothing, right? So
Not really. I
yeah,
don't- Semantics.
what's the one that we are totally in control of? What's the one we can really,
I think the one that the EDC is the most in control of is the third one.
okay,
Working on with the communications, the Explore
Right.
website, and it is a partnership with the WBA,
right,
but that there's no one else in town really, no other commissions, committees. Obviously, the Board of Selectmen is involved, as they are with basically anything that happens in town. But that one probably is the most autonomous of all of these, I would think. There are a couple others where no one else is really working, whether it's working with the WBA or working to support musical arts and culture. So no one else really is doing that. None of the other commissions or boards.
well, I would go with whatever other people aren't doing, we should do it first. That should be a priority,
Okay, so prioritized by primary responsibility.
correct?
Okay.
And then work from there.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. So I will work on this. I will take all those comments and put together I'll just see if I can just add a column for primary responsibility and sort of highlight who's primary, who's secondary.
Right.
And then see if that changes our thinking on that some.
Maybe who helps on each responsibility as well.
What do you mean by that? Say that.
Well, if there's a
Helps.
committee for a responsibility, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone else want to add to the discussion on the plan and the funding request? We didn't really talk at all about the funding tied to each of these objectives.
Right.
The communication one is based on absolute invoices and estimates like that one. We would have to change what we're trying to do. All the others are suggestions of how to further those objectives, but if anyone wants to weigh in on those, this would be a good time to do that as well. Or you can send it.
How does the number change from last year?
Oh, you know what? That's a good point. Let me just show you. Jim asked me to do this, and since we didn't have a quorum, it hasn't been as a formal, since we're not voting on it. But this, I'm sharing my screen, shows what we were budgeted for this year and what we're proposing next year. And it's actually the only real change is in the project plan and support. It's a little bit less. One newsletter, the communications, the newsletter website component went up a little bit. This is what the town budget looks like. And I'll just let you all know too that my salary is in there. I don't know what they're going to do with salaries. There was a 7% COLA this year. I doubt the town's going to do COLA at 7% cost of living adjustment. I just threw in 2% because that's kind of historically what they've done in the past. It'll be somewhere probably between the two. And that's up to the select. So I left all of that so you can kind of see what our total budget looks like and what the request looks like versus last year and where we stand for this year so far.
Okay.
Does anyone have questions about that?
Do you need the okay from the committee on this in order to go to further budget meetings that you're having? Or can you wait till next month?
Well, it is preferred. Jim asked that we have a vote, that the committee sign off on this. We don't have a quorum, so I don't know. I guess we could get the feeling of the 5 people here. It's close to a majority. It's not an official vote. They are working on
Michelle,
their
do you know
budget
that I
right
logged
now.
Michelle, do you know that I logged in?
Oh,
I don't know if
Kristen,
that
you're
means-
here.
Yeah, I've been on for a while, but I don't know if you,
I'm
could see
sorry,
that.
you were on my second screen. I did not see you. Thank you so much. Hey, guys, we just got a quorum.
okay, that's what I was,
Yay.
wanted to make sure you knew I was there.
Thank you for speaking up because I hadn't heard from you and you were just off my screen. I had checked periodically before. All right, well, we have a quorum now. It would be really helpful to have the vote of the EDC on the budget because the selectmen are developing it right now. Obviously, they can go in and adjust as they feel the need to, and historically have done that in the past, but at least knowing that the EDC is in general behind the plan would be helpful.
Okay.
Would anyone like to make a motion that we approve the budget request?
I'll make a motion, we'll approve it.
Okay. Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay. Kristen, Dan, all in favor?
Aye.
I guess say aye. I
Aye.
heard 3. I can't, gotta look at, here, wait, I'm gonna stop the share so I can see everybody. All right. It
Aye.
looks,
Aye, Tricia
all
says
right,
aye.
it looks
Aye.
unanimous, I think. All right, so, thank you very much. So we'll leave the budget request as it is, and I'll sort of tweak the, work with the suggestions that everyone had about looking at the primary responsibility for each of the objectives in the plan, and we'll talk about that next month and really try to prioritize and hammer out who's responsible for
Great.
what. So I think that's a great idea.
Wonderful.
Great. So I would just like to give the 2 quick updates as we move on in the old business here. The guidebook update, the committee of the WBA and myself and Julia has been working on this, reaching out to businesses. Fran, if you want to update the success you guys have had so far in the printing, that's been really made some great progress.
Yeah, in terms of the printing, I mean, our goal was to have $2,500 supported by businesses who wanted to have their own logo on their guidebooks. And that was something that had been done in the past. And at this point, we're still looking for some more, but at this point, Rumsey, Gunnery, and Sotheby's have signed on to have logos imprinted on their books. And we're looking for 2 to 3 more.
I just want to say that Hollister House reached out to me yesterday. And so I gave them the pricing information. They might be interested in doing a print run with their logo on the back.
Okay,
And,
I'll follow up with them too and talk to Pam.
okay, and Mayflower is getting back. I gave her the pricing information, and so we should be hearing from them.
Right,
Soon-
we're
soon.
waiting on Matthew's group, which has done it in the past. And Washington Montessori is probably not going to do it because they just aren't having the contact with parents that they've had in the past, but that's still a little bit of a question.
Okay, that makes sense. Great, thank you. In speaking with Julia, if we work, she says she'll start getting a mock layout put together for us so that we can identify, we need to help fill in the missing information on some of the new businesses And we should have a layout ready for our next meeting. One thing I did, that's sort of a question mark that I told her that we would talk about at this meeting, and I'm going to share my screen. So this is I don't know if everyone knows, but the guidebook is on Explore Washington, the electronic version. So if you're ever looking for one and you don't have a hard copy, it's right here. And we talked about the welcome that's right here. There was a suggestion to have it be from the first selectman, another suggestion that it be from the WBA and the town of Washington. I think the words themselves are fine. I just wanted the feelings of the committee on exactly who it is from. I guess the first version of this was done just by the WBA, or was it done by the EDC as well?
No, the first version was done by the WBA.
Okay. So what is the committee, how does the committee feel, the welcome coming from?
Could it be from both?
Yeah, I think it can be from the WBA and the town of Washington, or from the or the EDC. We can sign it however we want. We just have to kind of think about what do we.
I think it should be personalized. Both is a good idea. I vote for Jim and perhaps Lisa, but I think we should have a name.
Okay.
Well, and I'm going to argue the contrary on that, because I mean, we don't know how long this printing is going to last or when we'll make changes again. And it's very possible that there will be changes in the people. And it's really the entities that are putting together. And I've talked to Lisa about that.
That's a good point.
And she's okay with that. So we just have so we have the WBA and the town of Washington.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah, knowing that information. Thanks.
Why is there a sentiment that the town needs to sign it also?
I think if the town doesn't sign it, then it looks like it's just an advertisement to me. That's my take on it.
It's an advertorial.
I like having the town involved in it just because I think it kind of brings it all together.
Absolutely.
Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it demonstrates that partnership that we've been talking about. So
Exactly.
we can do the business association and the town, and maybe, what do we think? Should we put the logos in there? The WBA. I think the logos are on the back cover, if I'm not mistaken. If you just let me flip through. So maybe logos is not as important. Yeah, we have the WBA with the website, Town of Washington website. So maybe we just do WBA in the town. There. Ooh, there it is. What's this part? Okay. Oh, that's just a background. All right, great. I'll put that into the shared document, and we'll let Julia prepare a draft for us to look at. Yeah, mock-up, I guess, whatever it was I was trying to say. All right, wow. I'm gonna just give are there any other questions before I move on from that, or comments on the guidebook? And I just want to give you a quick update on the Welcome Center.
Nope.
Okay, so the quick update, and I'm going to just, I think it helps visualize, just going to share my screen with some pictures. So since our last meeting, I've met with the Buildings and Property Commission, and just yesterday I met with Julia and Stephen Barkas from the museum, and I'm very excited about the direction that things are moving. It's been challenging at times, but the buildings and property people went over to the Legion Hall and took a look, and they said, oh yeah, you know, it could use a coat of paint. We can stain that railing. You know, let's talk to the garden club. Let's maybe get a planter or something out front so we can spruce that all up. They are on board with that, and we're meeting again tomorrow, or they're going to start getting estimates and such. They did ask though, when it came to the whole welcome communication component, they said, you know, it's the Legion Hall, and we want to make sure that we are paying respect to our veterans, and that we don't lose that component of Legion Hall. So I reached out to Julia and Stephen Bartkus because they worked together on the exhibit that's up at the Washington Gun Museum right now, all about the history of Washington. And I said, you know, and actually what's interesting, I went back and took more pictures. The pictures that are currently on the wall where we're talking about putting some information they aren't about veterans, they're all about when it was a train station. So they had some wonderful ideas about putting something together that really honors our veterans. We've got these two walls here that highlights the train station, but gives there are no dates, there's no context. So they would really make it really something I'm excited about. You know, if you walk in, you might actually learn something about Washington, and you might want to then go visit, whether it's the museum or some of these other sites. But we were also talking about putting a water bottle filler on this wall because the bathroom plumbing is right on the other side, and making this wall the map of Washington that we're having redone for the guide, that's already been redone for the guidebook, with our QR code and a blurb or some kind of information about visit Explore Washington for events and upcoming or for more information, etc. So, but I need to run, I have to work on the spacing with the Buildings and Properties Committee, and I want the committee, Kristen has really helped a lot with taking pictures and sourcing things, and I'm hoping that the committee can then weigh in. We've got talking about adding the little welcome center sign right here to this sign, so we'll need to look at lettering and figuring that out. So there's still a lot of places where I'm going to need the committee's input, but I just need to see where the Buildings and Property Commission is tomorrow with that meeting. I also want to let everyone know that I spoke with Linda Gomez, because we did put $10,000, I think it was 10,000, it might have been 15, but I think it was 10 in the capital budget last year for it was under signage. And we knew we were either working on a kiosk or a sign or something, so we just called it signage. And I asked her if that money, if we could use that for this project. And as long as she thinks so. I mean, there are a few parameters. I don't have estimates yet. So, you know, we have to kind of figure that out. And I have to talk to Buildings and Property about how much of this they are really willing to budget for. And I don't know if Jim wants to weigh in on that. I just thought I'd let you all know that it looks like we're still moving forward, which
Great. Great.
Yeah, I would say, Michelle, Building and Property is committed to, we identified some of the issues outside of the building, the fresh coats of paint, the things like that. Their concern, and I share it as well, is we need to really have clarity, and rather than just saying, well, we're going to do this with this wall or that wall, we need to have clarity of where things are going to go. And that was their concern, is to have as minimal an impact as possible on the Legion Hall and the Legion members. After all, that's their building. The lease that was drafted 70 years ago was designed for the veterans and the seniors. So we just want to make sure that we're doing everything properly. Other than that, Building and Property, and we're committed within our budget to do things, you know, the painting on the inside, the repair, any repairs that are needed, things like that.
great. Yeah. And
Did they make any progress with the bathrooms? The bathroom question?
The septic system.
Yeah,
actually.
did they make any progress evaluating that?
Yeah, Kristen, I reached out to the people that installed it actually, and they saw no issue. They feel it's got plenty of galleys, the leach fields. It's not an old system. It's probably around 20 years old. So they felt there was no problem with having public access.
Oh, good.
Yeah, which is great. Just gonna, I don't know how to turn the volume down. Well, that'll stop ringing in a sec. All right, I'm gonna stop that share. So just to let you know, that's moving forward. All right, are there any other questions or comments, reports of the WBA or selectmen, things that we didn't, I feel like we kind of covered everything today, but if there's anything else that people want to share, report back on. Nothing? All right, great. Oh, you know what? We didn't approve the minutes. Now that, do we still have 6 here? Yes, we
I'm
do.
still here.
Would somebody like to move that we approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you,
I
Dan.
second it. I second it.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. All in favor?
I,
I,
All right, excellent. Thank you. If there are no other comments or business, then do I have a move to adjourn? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Fran.
Second.
All right, Tricia, I believe we're probably all in favor. 4:30, I cannot seem to get us finished faster. Thank you all very much. It was a lot of information. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Bye, Michelle.